Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host, Advocate Tulio Hoyani. The investigation is closing in and it's closing in. It is becoming more and more apparent that what happened in that house on that fateful day probably was not an accident. Let me give you another angle of the analysis of what happened there. The version that we have, and this is the only version that I'm interested in, is the version of 375. You'll recall that the version of 375 says there were no intruders into that house. And I stick by that version that there were no intruders into that house. But looking at that version, it also has its own problems. And here are the problems. In terms of 375, Longwa is supposed to have brought that firearm to the house. And it is now very clear that this was his father's firearm. It was Chico Twala's firearm. He brought it there, knowing long where he probably stolen his father's firearm. I don't think Chico would have knowingly, given him that firearm. But be that as it may, all that we know is Longwe Twala took that firearm there. And when he was there, he fired a bullet right in front of everybody. And this shocked all the people who were there. After he fired this bullet, apparently Senzo prevailed upon him and, took him out of the house because he was becoming unruly. That firearm was then taken away from Longwe by Senzo, and Senzo gave it to Kelly Kumalo, his girlfriend. Now, the version that we are told in terms of 375 is that Kelly Kumalo started playing with that gun, maybe to show off that she knew a thing or two about firearms. And the firearm misfired or discharged a bullet or bullets, because apparently bullets were found in that house. More than one bullet was certainly fired. And that is how Senzo Meyiwa met his death. That is the version of 375. But let us put everything into context before we start saying Kelly Kumalo fired this gun by mistake. We have the evidence of Brigadier Gininda. The evidence of Brigadier Gininda is that a year before Senzo was killed, he found text messages between Kelly Kumalo and her younger sister, Zandi. And in those text messages, Kelly Kumalo says clearly to Zandi that she hates Senzo. And not only does she hate Senzo, but she would like to have Senzo killed. That is evidence before the Pretoria High Court. I'm not just making up these things. That is evidence before the Pretoria High Court, and that is the evidence of Brigadier Gininda. Now, when you look at that, you find there a motive. You find a clear motive why Kelly would have wanted Senzo killed. We also know, as a matter of fact, that Senzo was in the process of making up with his wife Mandisa. In other words, Senzo had made it very clear, or was intending, to go back to his wife, Mandisa. You remember there's that estranged wife, Mandisa, Senzo's lawful wife. So Senzo wanted to go back to Mandisa. And this is probably what, made Kelly so angry. And this forms a motive. You see, we don't really have to, in law, you don't have to establish a motive for a crime, at least in South African law. But all the better if you have a motive. The motive here was, to put it, in simple terms, if I can't have him, you are not going to have him. In other words, Kelly was saying to herself, if I can't have Senzo, Mondays I will not have Senzo too. Another interesting thing is, after Senzo was killed, we also have it on record that it took more than an hour or close to an hour before Senzo was taken to hospital. In other words, after Senzo had been shot, amazingly, the people in the house never, treated this matter with any sense of agency at all. Can you imagine anybody getting killed in your presence and you taking almost an hour to take that person to hospital? You see, if you tie up that evidence with the text messages that I've just referred to, you'd see that Kelly wanted Senzo dead. The only reason why you'd let a person bleed to death for an hour after he's been shot is to ensure that the person is dead. So that by the time Kelly was taken by the time Senzo was taken to hospital, he was dead. That is why on arrival he was certified dead. Now, it shows one thing, that the killing of Senzo was intentional. Let me just give you another angle also. Longwe Twala had just fired a firearm right in front of everybody, to the surprise of everybody. And Senzo had taken him outside of that house. Now, if we are to believe that Kelly was playing around with this firearm, how do you start playing around with a firearm that has just been discharged under those circumstances? Longwe had just been, reprimanded and taken out of the house by Senzo for firing that same firearm. How then, immediately after the firearm is handed over to Kelly by Senzo, who had taken it from Longwe, does Kelly start playing with this firearm? It just does not add up. It just does not add up. Now, even if you were to believe that Senzo was killed by mistake, more than one bullet was discharged in that house. You cannot shoot a person by mistake twice. It does not happen. The second bullet that you fire is probably not by mistake. So, taking all these circumstances and looked at together, we see a motive here. And that motive is clear because we also have it on record that at some stage, Kelly Khumalo had fought with Mandisa at some shopping mall. You see, when you look at the circumstances surrounding the shooting of Senzo Meyiwa, in terms of 375, I've said 636 is a fictitious docket. Let us forget about 636. The only issue that we are left with was this killing or the shooting of Senzo accidental on the part of Kelly Khumalo? Clearly, the scenario that I've just portrayed or that I've just given to you indicates that it was not by mistake. You don't fire more than one bullet by mistake. You don't start playing with a firearm like that, which has just been fired a short while earlier. How then would you just start behaving like Longwe? When Senzo had just prevailed upon Longwe to stop doing what he was doing. So it just does not add up. But the crucial evidence here, for the purposes of the law, are the text messages. And these text messages, you will recall, were made a year before Senzo was killed. That should have been sometime in 2013. So there you have it. There you have it. We don't have any doubt about now who killed Senzo Meyiwa. And you see, the killing was probably intentional because now we have 636. After this intentional killing, we just see a cover-up now. The present case that we are seeing in the Pretoria High Court is the product of a cover-up. The whole thing was covered up. Clearly, Kelly wanted to cover herself up. And everybody in and around this matter conspired with Kelly to cover up Kelly as the real killer of Senzo Meyiwa. That is why we have that bogus version that there were intruders into that house when there were no intruders into that house. So I have no doubt in my mind, and I'm basing this on the evidence that I'm seeing, that Senzo Meyiwa was intentionally killed by Kelly Khumalo in that house on that day. Let me round up today's episode by saying, in the next episode, we'll talk about the finer details now of the T-shirt projects and any other donations that you might make to the Meyiwa family, especially Senzo Meyiwa's mother, to tide her over the Christmas period and into the new year. I'll be giving you the finer details of those in the next episode. So look forward to that. The million signatures that I'm collecting also, I'll give you the details of that, of how you can join this campaign of 1 million signatures that I talked about to have Kelly Khumalo arrested for the killing of Senzo Meyiwa. That will also come in the next episode. But having said that, let me thank you for the views that I'm seeing. Let me thank you for the subscription that I'm seeing. And please have a nice day.